Okay. Hello Namibia, welcome to your daily lunchtime show where we catch up on current events and headlines. My name is Priska Anyolo and you are watching NMH at 1. After the announcement made by the Namibian president that Namibia will relax its lockdown status, including the Irongo region, it would seem as though all of us gave a huge sigh of relief. There are obviously a few important highlights which we would like to repeat here. Irongo has moved from status 1 to status 3, effective since last night after midnight. These stage 3 conditions will last until midnight of the 6th of July. Stage 4 will only apply to the rest of Namibia as from midnight going into Tuesday, the 30th of June, that is next week. This excludes Irongo's towns of Walvis Bay, Swakopmund and Arandas, as their stage 3 remains in force as explained, and in the case of these 3 towns, travel to other regions remains restricted for that time too. These 3 hubs are Namibia's biggest concerns for now. Cross-border traveling truckers will be escorted to their destinations, and the idea is that none of these drivers mingle with other drivers who conduct transport activities only within Namibian borders. Whereas the 3 towns are still restricted in terms of public gatherings, which also impacts on the opening of their schools, the rest of the country will start to open up systematically, but government obviously will keep a tight control over the impact of opening the Namibian community again. Government is also having a serious look at how to kickstart the Namibian tourism sector again and hopefully allow the Namibian economy a little respite by at least enjoying a part of the tourism season for 2020. It needs to be remembered that Namibia, even with these increased cases of COVID-19, still remains a rather safe destination. One of the most favorable attributes in this regard is the fact that our country's population density is very low. We need to embrace this positive aspect and start carrying it to the market. As from the 15th of August, the government should be in a position where remaining issues such as the requirement that visitors need to go into 14-day-long quarantine before they can actually go on holiday can be addressed properly. As you can see, Namibia has now taken up 69 new cases into quarantine and discharged 53 people. So currently we have 700 people in quarantine. Please note that this is not isolation, as these people feared to have possibly contracted COVID-19. So in total, Namibia has discharged 2,582 people all in all. Eleni Nanjato got hold of the regional commander of the police in the Oshana region, Rauha Amwele. The lady officer spoke to her colleagues and explained how her security cluster needs to operate, including visiting the schools and businesses to make sure that people stick to the rules.
When it comes to crime, when it comes to COVID-19, visit the shops, commanders, with your team. Check how the managers there they are running the business day to day, on daily basis. Whether they are also compliant and adhere to what the regulation is saying. Some are allowing people to go there without mask. They should maintain that. Also, when it comes to liquor, for those other outlets are selling liquor, they should also comply, because this regulation is for all of them, not only for bars and sardines. You go to Metro, if you find them selling alcohol on Sunday, and then deal with them. You go to Pick and Pay, if you find them selling alcohol on Sunday, or on Saturday after 1, and then deal with them. You go to these sardines, opened after 1 on Saturday, and then you have to deal with them. Are we together?
Yes, Commissioner.
Even you visit schools, you have to check how children, those grade 11 and 12 are behaving. I visit one school there in Okatana. What I found there, the teachers, they don't take care of these children. I found children just gathered as a normal business. They took out their mask. When you ask, where is your mask? It's in the pocket. And then therefore when we talk, not only to give fine or whatever, we should also educate them and tell them the dangerousness of the disease. We call them and I instruct them to line as you line, social distance in between them. And then I talk to them. I ask them, if the school is over? Yes. What are you doing here? Are you having study in the afternoon? No. Why are you standing here in a group? I ask them, do you understand that pandemic COVID-19? Yes, we heard about it. And do you know now, this is just the second day of your school now for this second semester. Why were you sent home, back home, for that long period? They said it's because of that disease. And then I said, now what are you doing here? Instead of going back home and start studying what you get from the school, you are now standing here and discuss unnecessary things. That is how we have when we meet. Even public members, those who are still not to, I don't know whether is it ignorance or they don't understand. We should still talk to them. Because we don't want the pandemic to split here, especially here in our area. You can see the movement and the behaviors of people. Whenever it comes and hit here,
Claudia Reiter spoke to Albin Burmeister about learning automation technology. He is of Hurster Machine Tools.
My name is Albin Burmeister from Hurster Machine Tool Company, and we represent Festo Didactic Systems here in Namibia. Festo Didactics is offering workstations and other equipment to support the educational standard for Namibian students at universities. Here, for example, we've got a complete MagLab system, which consists of 3 independent stations. Those are being used for supporting theoretical and practical studies in fields like mechatronics or automation. This is the conveyor station and represents a small-scale transport unit which can be found at a factory line, for example, in the industry. Its aim is to transport objects, and in this case to separate metal parts from non-metal parts. Okay, here we have the stacking unit. This is a far more advanced workstation compared now to the conveyor workstation, as we have here now also pneumatic components like pneumatic solenoid valves and pneumatic cylinders. The most complex workstation of the MagLab system is definitely the handling station. It uses a PLC to control the workstation independently. It moves objects by the help of a vacuum gripper. Such assemblies, for example, can be found in packaging lines. Okay, the MagLab workstations will be completely dismantled by the instructors, and the student's task is then to assemble and program the workstations in a way to receive a fully functional system.
Leandria Lowe spoke to people in Walvis Bay who were relieved at having been moved to phase 3 of the lockdown status.
Okay, we find ourselves in the CBD of Walvish Bay. We got some good news yesterday that we are finally in stage 3, and it's like Walvish Bay woke up from a very long slumber. Businesses are open, people are moving around. Additionally, the car wash here at Spot on Walvish Bay is full. Cars are lining up to get cleaned up, as you can see.
Ogeto Craig recorded a press statement of Werner January, the president of the Namibia's Transport and Taxi Union NTRU, who suggests that prices should remain on an increased platform after COVID-19.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, my name is Werner January. I'm the president of the Namibia Transport and Taxi Union. And we are here at a press conference at Venil, which I have called for. Yeah, we just wanted to give the latest communication between the NTTU and the Ministry of Works and Transport. Maybe if I can just go through the communication, and then if there are any questions, then we can take it from there. Yeah. Good morning. So let me quickly start with the communication, then we can go through other issues as they arise. You see, firstly, I would like to say there's actually a back and forth between NTTU and the Ministry of Works and Transport regarding the recent $14 increment or the 15% increment, where now NTTU is saying, we are not even claiming it is a fact, that we have requested an increment already in 2018, a 10% increment. And the law suggests that once there is any fuel increment, a taxi or an association or a trade union may request a taxi fare increment. As long as that is done within 10 days of the fuel increment, and as long as it is 10% and below, the law suggests that it is automatic because it is a notice you are given. Only in the event that you are asking for a higher percentage than 10%, that you need the board's approval and the ministry's approval. So let me now go through the letter for you. Okay, yeah. Now, hence we are saying that because the ministry is taking a hostile position against NTTU, we are telling him that, you see, for the past 10 years, we are sitting actually with a secret here, secret information concerning truck drivers. We know exactly how to solve that issue, while everybody is jumping around and going all around without knowing what to do. And we are saying that, you see, when you look at Section 16 of the Labor Act and Section 17, it quite clearly states that the employer, if they want their employees to work excessive overtime hours, they need a kind of application from the minister, number one, that is Section 16. Section 17 states that they need a certificate from the executive director of the ministry, but both sections stipulate that it must be done with the consent of the employees, because that will go hand in hand with saying that the employee can only give consent if they are happy with their conditions of employment or if they are satisfied. Meaning that at any point they are no longer satisfied, they can withdraw that consent at any time without any negotiation with anyone, because that is only given with their consent, provided that they are.
The Namibian Sun focuses on the calculated risk that government is taking by not only gradually returning to the country to some form of normalcy while trying to revive the $15 billion sector, which after all has an impact on 44,000 employees. The Allgemeine Zeitung also focuses on the relaxation of COVID-19 related lockdown regulations, but specifically concentrated on the increased numbers of COVID-19 infections at the coast and the resultant impact on the towns of Walvis Bay, Swakopmund and Arandis. In the same manner, the Republican also focuses on the return to what Denver Kisting termed the new normal, especially with stage 4 lockdown regulations allowing for much more freedom as from next week. The Namibian tells us of a mother and her children who are under risk without having been awarded proper care, in the process of becoming a risk to the rest of the residents of Walvis Bay. The New Era focuses on the fact that schools will be opened in an organized fashion, but that children's attendance of face-to-face classes will remain on an own risk basis. Now moving on to the inside pages. On page 3 of the Namibian Sun, you can read more about the motion tabled Parliament last week, during which the concept of national reconciliation was discussed again. The AZ focuses on the fact that the regional councillor for Walvis Bay, Nole Chipinge, insisted that officials of the Ministry of Health should be held responsible for the town's apparent unpreparedness on a major health crisis, as posed by the increasing number of COVID-19 cases in that coastal town. On page 3 of Republican, you can read more about the so-called wonder medicine, a steroid substance known as dexamethasone, which apparently fights the COVID-19 virus. You might have followed that development on the international newscasts too. The Namibian has an interesting article on page 3 where the Auditor General's office seems to have paid the exorbitant amount to $106,000 for normal plumbing repairs. And New Era reports about the ACC that has been subjected to criticism now that they are slashing their travel funds, which amongst others was used to maintain an educational roadshow, teaching and informing people of rural areas about corruption practices and what the ACC does. In today's interview, Okhone Tlhache speaks to aviation columnist Lyndon Burns. Lyndon is the spokesperson of IATA in Southern Africa and runs the consulting firm Plain Talking.
Good afternoon and welcome to NMH at 1. My name is Okhone Tlhache, and joining me in studio via Skype is Mr. Lyndon Burns of Plain Talking, who will be reflecting on the status of the aviation sector within Southern Africa. Good afternoon, Mr. Burns, and welcome to NMH at 1.
Much for having me on the show, and good afternoon to all the viewers as well.
Mr. Burns, how would you describe the state of the aviation sector within Southern Africa, particularly now with COVID-19?
Well, in short, they're facing the most severe existential crisis that they've ever encountered. Right now, it's an unprecedented time for the air transport and the airline industry. Never in its entire history of almost 100 years has the industry faced such devastation and been forced to come to almost a complete standstill. I think the worst was probably the Second World War. I describe it as an existential crisis because the biggest threat to the airlines at the moment is liquidity, and make whatever money they do have last as long as they can. When airlines went into this crisis, on average, they had about 2 months of cash reserves. Many of them have had to go to the markets to try and raise loans or renegotiate loans, and many have also had to go to governments to ask for financial relief. And we've seen around the world a number of governments doing that, notably in the US, but also in places like Germany. And what's been quite interesting I suppose in the context of Air Namibia and the ongoing discussion around state ownership, is that in many of these countries and many of these airlines where you had very strong private sector airlines like Lufthansa, negotiate relief packages with governments in return for surrendering some equity shareholdings to governments. Not big equity shareholdings, but significant.
And then going forward, what would you say is the future of particularly state-owned enterprises like we would have for Namibia and also for SAA?
Look, I think at the end of the day, ownership of an airline is neither here nor there. What's important is, is the airline under good, strong leadership? Is it adequately capitalized? Has it got the right equipment? Has it got the right people? Are they being productive? Is the airline being dynamic in the market? All of those things. Is it doing, performing optimally? And ownership is not going to determine that unless you've got political interference on a day-to-day basis. So, state ownership works best when the airlines don't become tools for political instruments, but are used at, where the shareholder sets a mandate, provides the capital, appoints the right people, and then lets them get on with it, and cuts them loose to go and compete in the market. Where airlines tend to fail is when governments interfere on a day-to-day basis and start basically trying to run a business based on political ideology instead of commercial. Sound commercial and financial basis.
Would you say then that COVID-19 has been sort of a blessing for how airlines are gonna be managed, particularly in our part of the world going forward?
I wouldn't say COVID-19 has been a blessing for anybody. Certainly not. It's caused immense damage to this industry. It's going to take at least a year and a half for domestic markets to recover to 2019 levels, and it's probably going to take 3 or 4 years to recover to on the international markets to 2019 levels. Right now, we've got some markets have opened up. We've got restricted domestic operations in South Africa. You've got domestic operations in Namibia, and Europe. Although there's a lot of capacity in the market, the actual take-up by passengers has been quite poor and quite weak. So the load factors, that's the proportion of seats available, the proportion of those that have been taken up by revenue-paying passengers is very low. Now, at the same time, there are enormous costs as they restart. There are unavoidable costs like the costs of either owning or leasing aircraft, the insurances, the maintenance, the salaries, training for pilots, keeping them sharp, keeping them current, the same for cabin crew. Amount of money that has a lot of outlay, and when there's not enough revenue coming in, that puts airlines in a very precarious and vulnerable position. And many airlines are now taking on more debt in order to they're borrowing more, so they're taking on more debt, and there's a very real danger that they could be completely overburdened with debt.
That was Mr. Lyndon Burns from Plain Talking. Thank you for tuning in to our interview on NMH at 1. Goodbye.
And with that, we have reached the end of this live broadcast. My name is Priska Agnolo, and thank you so much for listening. And we here at NMH wish you a pleasant day ahead. Remember to keep your distance and wash your hands regularly. We should all keep fighting this invisible foe called COVID-19. And last but not least, here is a short forecast of the weather, which you can expect for tomorrow, Wednesday, the 24th of June, 2020. Goodbye.